This is, of course, the day where we get into this discussion of, okay, did he create the sun, the moon, and the stars on day 4? And we said last time, as we covered the first day, where he said, let there be light, in my estimation, he's not creating the sun, the moon, and the stars on this particular day. And the main reason, there's actually 3 pretty strong reasons. The first reason is
Hey, welcome to Open Scripture, where we seek to sharpen the way the church reads her foundational texts. My name is Nick Nail, and with me is Dr. Tracy McKenzie, and we're just going to keep going from our conversation in Genesis 1, where we have the creation narrative, but Tracy likes to call it more of the preparation week than the creation week, being that, as we've discussed, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So everything was created in verse 1. And by the time we get to the next few verses, we start to see what God is doing with creation that has already been created. So now he's starting to prepare some things. And so we're just kind of rethinking how we should read and interpret this passage that is very often discussed, very often debated, and has some still many question marks on how to understand and interpret this.
Yeah, many question marks. And again, that's one of the reasons why we're going through it. Our purpose here, as we seek to sharpen the way the church is reading these texts, is to stay as close as possible to the text. We want to really frame all of our understanding within the text. So if we think about even, let's say, Genesis 1-2, we want to kind of frame that text in light of Genesis 1:1 and then all the way to where the author ends in Deuteronomy 30, of course. And we've even talked about that, of course, in reference to the Lion King. Again, we have a kind of macro view or a panorama, if you will, of that. And now, of course, we're in the details.
Yeah. Well, like you said, we want to stay within the text. Probably just as a reminder, a lot of these conversations around Genesis 1 are seen through our modern lens of science and how to interpret this creation versus evolution and geology and just all these things that are kind of extra biblical.
That's right.
And might be helpful, might not. But really, when we're understanding what the text itself is saying, some of the questions that are debated and talked about are not really important to what the text itself has to say.
Yeah, and even as you say that, Nick, as we think about, again, our modern discussion, bringing in kind of modern extra biblical information from the Hubble telescope or the latest maybe scientific discoveries or theories, it's interesting. People also do that in relation to ancient extra biblical information, because again, a lot of people, when they start talking about Genesis 1, are bringing in the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Atrahasis, and the Gilgamesh epic, these other kind of ancient creation stories or narratives from neighboring countries. And again, that's all well and good, and we perhaps might learn a thing or two about genre.
Yeah.
But again, we're trying to understand the intention that we see in these texts, and the boundaries, of course, are what the author is giving us. And we'll talk more about these other things and interpretation in a later series when we do a series on biblical interpretation. By the way, since I'm thinking about it, we'd appreciate it if this information looks like it's going to be helpful or is helpful to you. Would you share or subscribe, also comment? It reminds me of one other thing. Don't forget, at the end of our series on Genesis 1, we're going to do a question-answer series. And of course, we want the questions to come from you all, but we need you to help us and send us in your questions. And you can do that. We'll put this in the show notes, but you can just send an email to info@open-scripture.org. That's open-scripture.org. openScripture.org. Send us your questions on Genesis 1. We want to address those.
So now we have we're just got past day one, and we learned about the light, and God called the light good, right?
Yes.
And so now what's the rest of the frame that we're looking at for these next few days?
Yes. So now this episode, we're going to try to get days 2 through 5 in. So you can see we're kind of picking up the pace. We're not going into as deep a detail as we did over Genesis 1:1, but we're going to try to get days 2 through 5 in, because really this whole chapter is heading for day 6. So the author's attention is going to rest on day 6. And that's where we will really stop and slow down and apply what the author is doing here. But we do have a few questions that we have to answer. So in this episode, we're going to talk about, again, we're going to talk about the literary frame that we see here. We're going to talk about the repetitions. We can kind of open that up, that show us the kind of outline or structure of the chapter. And one of the things we have to really stop on is the word make. We see that in verse 7. We see it also as day 4 opens up, when the great lights appear, the sun and the moon and stars. So we're going to have to explain that. And then if we make it to day 5, we'll talk about creation, because we see the word create again in day 5, and blessing. So those are kind of the things that we're headed for in this episode. So you want to pick it up right here at the end of day 1. This would be verse 6.
All right, verse 6, and again, I'm reading from the CSB. So, then God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters, separating water from water."
Okay. So again, I like that. We see, and God said. Now, I'm not sure if it'd be interesting in the CSB, we won't take the time to look at this, if every day said, then God said, but generically it's, and God said. And remember, and God said begins every day.
That's part of that framework.
It's part of the repetition creating the structure.
Okay.
Another thing that creates a structure is this idea of let something be, let there be, or let the waters be, or let the earth be, so things like this. We'll point this out, but this is what's known as a volitional verb. It's a different kind of verb, and every day begins with this kind of volitional act, God speaking his will, and then of course that comes about. The other repetitions we see are, of course, and God saw that it was good, and there was evening and morning, and then a particular day. I think there's even another repetition. And we should view this repetition as maybe a skyscraper. If you can imagine a skyscraper, let's just say a 7-floor apartment building or skyscraper being built, and it has the metal beams, if you will, that make up the structure or the skeleton of that skyscraper. That's what this repetition in every day is like. That's what's giving the chapter its clear structure. And then the author is going to fill up, we could say, those floors, if you will, those levels. He's going to fill it up with particular content. And the content on day 6 is going to explode with kind of meaning and significance.
Yeah.
And the other floors, the first floor is not, it has minimal content. Second floor, a little bit more content. Third floor, even more, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's a helpful illustration.
So that's kind of the way we're going to look at this. And so when we see God said, let there be, we know we're in the next day. Now, read that first clause one more time. I want to see how the CSB translates this word rakia.
Okay. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters."
All right. So this word expanse, depending on the English version you're reading, sometimes it's translated as firmament. Expanse, I think there's probably a few other translations. Sometimes from the ancient worldview, ancient modern or ancient perspective, this is considered maybe a dome. And the reason for this could be partly because this if this was a verb, this would be a piece of metal that is placed over something like a blacksmith, and he hammers it out. That's what the verb means here, like something that's kind of hammered and spread out. But other than that, which is the verb, and this is not the verb, this is the noun. Other than that, we have no real basis to know what this really is.
So this word is not used very often?
No, not used often at all. It's a pretty rare word, again, especially in its noun form. And usually when it is used, it's referencing this. So we're still kind of asking the question what it is. Now, if we look, we see that this expanse is in the midst of the waters. So again, this is referring back to Genesis 1:2, where we see the waters. Again, if you think about the way that the ancients would have viewed, and observed creation, of course, there was water above in the clouds or coming from the clouds, and there was, of course, water below, even, again, in the earth, if we think about wells as well as all the seas and waterways, of course. But this is going to be a divide between those waters. Now, again, we have to think about what is going on here in this preparation week. And these first days, the first 3 days, are going to be all about dividing and separating. This is kind of the fashioning or the work that God is doing. He's dividing and separating in these different spheres. So God separates day 1, he separates light from darkness. Day 2, he's going to separate the sky from the land. Day 3, he's also separating, again, the waters from the dry land. So we've got this separating going on, and we see it, again, here in day 2, just like we saw it even in day 1. All right?
All right.
So that really takes care of verse 6. We see here now that verse 7, like we said, first verb is this volitional verb. Sure enough, in verse 7, then God moves to do something. And he makes the expanse. All right. Now, any difference there in the CSB?
So God made the
Okay.
expanse.
So
yeah.
God made, right? Again, so the narrative continues, and God made. Now, we immediately have to think about this word make. What does it mean that and God made? And this is going to become even more important on the 4th day when he, quote unquote, makes the great lights, because that's what it says.
Yeah.
He makes these. So what does this word make mean?
So this is different than the create.
This
He's not creating here.
That's right. He's not creating. He's definitely not using the create verb, right? Bara. Remember, this is in Genesis 1:1, and we're not going to see it again until day 5. And again, it's going to be specially highlighted in day 6. This is a different verb. This is the verb make. And it's the word asa in Hebrew. And we can just at least begin with an analogy here to our English verb make, right? If we say I made something or I am making something, what does it mean? And if we just think about I made my bed, well, that can mean a couple different things. Now, I suppose on the one hand, it could mean you made your bed, creation ex nihilo, right, from out of nothing. That would be a little bit silly, but we could kind of envision, God making this from out of nothing, right? Not what it means, of course. We could also think I made my bed. I literally went out, got some wood, and
built it, fashioned
it.
Yeah.
Right? Put the wood together, fashioned it, brought it into a particular place and being, and made my bed.
Yeah.
And of course, then the normal way we say this is I made my bed. It means you straightened it up. You might have thrown the covers on, or again, you might be the type that makes it up really nicely
to make it presentable.
Make it presentable. So that's kind of this word make in Hebrew as well. And it can mean all these different things. It can mean a bunch of different things. Doesn't mean it has all of those meanings in this particular verse. We want to be careful of that. But one place we could go to, I think, to show this verb here is 2 Samuel 19:24. 2 Samuel 19:24. You want to read that?
Yeah. I'm gonna butcher this name of this
Okay, that's
of
fine.
Saul's grandson, Mephib. I'm even gonna try. Saul's grandson, this guy, also went down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet, trimmed his mustache, or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned
All right.
safely.
So he had not taken care of his feet
Mm-hmm.
or trimmed his mustache.
Right.
So both of those verbs right there are the word asa.
I saw.
So there, they literally means basically, it's hygiene for your feet,
Mm-hmm.
and then also hygiene for your face, to trim your beard. And again, that's kind of shows the range of meaning that
Yeah.
this verb has. Again, it can mean appoint, it means prepare, it means
Fashion or
fashion.
form it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So lots of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And here, I think what is being said is that God basically straightened up
Mm.
or prepared or fashioned the rakia. And how did he do that? Well, he made this divide. The next clause says, and he divided between the waters which were from under the expanse and the waters which were above the expanse, and it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we see here that the word make doesn't mean create. And here it's even kind of a mystery as exactly what he did. We only know that whatever it was, it created this division between the waters. Now, I want us to see here, again, what this division is called, right? The expanse in verse 8. You want to pick up verse 8?
Yep. God called the expanse sky. Evening came, and then morning, the second day.
All right. So, again, now we're already through with the second day. We see that the expanse is literally the sky.
Hmm.
So,
Is that still the same word that you called the firmament?
yes, God called to the firmament
Mm-hmm.
or to the expanse.
Mm-hmm.
And literally the word sky is the word heavens here.
Yeah. Shemayim.
Shemayim.
Mm-hmm.
So now we can even see, again, Genesis 1:1 in a sense is being unpacked. Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth. We said this was this totality,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now he's breaking that down. We've already ran into the word earth, eretz, as soon as we hit verse 2.
Yeah.
And now we see the Shemayim here. And here, the Shemayim is called this expanse.
Yeah.
And then I want us to note here, and it'll be interesting, I'll test you here, Nick, just a little bit, if you don't mind. What is missing? Because we are already at the end of day 2. There was evening, there was morning, day 2.
Well, the first day he called something good.
Okay, the first day he called something good.
And this day, nothing was called good.
Nothing good. So pretty interesting. Now, if you remember, I think on the last episode, we talked about how, and God saw that it was good, is mentioned 7 times.
Mm.
And here we see it's not mentioned. And that is because on day 3, there's going to be 2 and it was goods. And then also on day 6, there are 2 and it was goods.
Yeah.
So a lot of people ask, well, why on day 2 is there not and it was good? And, there's no great answers, but I do think we're also missing and God saw.
Mm.
So in a sense here, we could say, first of all, the author wants 7 of these clauses.
Right.
And God saw that it was good. And because of what he's already done, and because of what he's going to do in days 3 and 6, he needs to subtract 1.
Yeah.
So I think that might be part of it. He's going for 7 of these. I also think another reason might be that there's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that's missing. And God saw. So here, there's nothing to see because this expanse is literally the sky, if you will, and it's invisible in a sense. So I really think that could be an explanation of why the author doesn't include that here.
Yeah, and I want to ask a question. for verse 8, evening came, then morning, the second day. Now that's the ordinal number, the second day. And again, we talked about in verse 4, when we read about day one, that wasn't called the first day. It was just called one day.
That's right.
So can we just kind of recap that and where we're
Yeah.
at here?
Yeah. So this is literally the ordinal number, as are the rest of the days: the third day, the fourth day,
Yeah.
the fifth day, the sixth day. These are
Mhm.
all ordinal numbers, and seventh day, if I remember correctly. Whereas that day one was not the ordinal number. So from that, we concluded that, okay, perhaps it wasn't the first 24-hour literal period,
Mhm.
because we also said in Genesis 1:1, things were already created, right?
Yeah.
God created everything in Genesis 1:1.
Mhm.
Genesis 1:2 assumes that the land and the waters, the great deep, are already there,
Right.
and nothing, of course, the creation week, the preparation week hadn't
Mhm.
started yet. So now we're in the second day. So we would say this is the second 24-hour period.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
And then this begins, of course, third day, right? And the third day, again, the same thing is going to happen that has been happening. God's going to speak, he's going to express a volition, and it's going to come to pass. And that action is going to divide and, again, create this sphere, these different spheres where things are then going to be put into.
Hmm.
So that day one is going to correspond with day 4, day 2 with day 5, and day 3 with day 6. So that literary frame is going to be one more piece of evidence that we use to show that day 6 is the climax. So get us going here on the third day, Nick.
Okay, so verse 9. Then God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so.
All right, so there you see, and God said, beginning the third day. Every day begins that. Day 1 begins in verse 3, and 2 begins in verse 6, and here we see day 3 begin in verse 9, and we're just going to keep going in this particular way.
Yeah. In our biblical imagination, how can we visualize the water being gathered into one place? Is this just like they're all here, now they're turning into rivers and they're turning into oceans and lakes, or is that one way to visualize it, or we don't actually know what's happening?
I think that is a fabulous question, Nick, because we see the volitional verb, let the waters be. There's your volitional verb. And unlike some other days, we don't get God's direct action on those things.
Yeah.
It just says, and it took place, right at the end of verse 9.
Yeah.
And then immediately God is calling to it.
Hmm.
And I think part of this, and we're going to see again at the end of verse 10, God saw that it was good. Another thing that is going on here is that the author is using, again, words to build up to the climax of day 6. So he's got to be relatively brief here in day 3 because he's going to give two specific acts of God working. So he doesn't have a lot of time to elaborate.
Yeah.
So I would say that's one of the reasons why he's brief here, is because he's going to get 2 acts of God working here, and then he's got to move on to day 4, because there's got to be more words in day 4, so to speak, and we can address that when we get to day 4 than there is in day 3. But of course, there's only one act of working in day 4.
Yeah.
So it's going to be elaborated. That one act is going to be greatly elaborated. So I do want us to notice here then in verse, after this comes to pass, I want us to notice in verse 10, God called to the dry land. So now we've seen, and God called on a regular basis as well. He calls in verse 8, of course, to the expanse, sky. And here he's going to call to this dry land, which appeared because God divided, or he gathered, if you will. He's going to call this dry land. All right, God called to the dry land, eretz. And here's our word earth again
Mm-hmm.
that we saw up in Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. And then he calls to the gathering of seas. The gathering of waters he calls seas.
Yeah.
So again, we can see how quickly the author is moving along here.
Mm-hmm.
So there is one thing in verse 10 that we haven't really already seen in the first 9 verses, and that's this dry land. And that's going to become eretz, is equivalent with this dry land. So notice now he's separating the dry land from what he's calling the seas.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in the corresponding day, in day 6,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to fill that up. Really, in days 5 and 6, he's going to fill up this dry seas and land.
So do we think that there was no dry land and then he separated the waters and now there's dry land? Or did waters and dry land already exist, but here he's just actually like doing something with it?
Well, I don't think he's definitely not creating. We've already had the eretz,
Yeah.
right? I presume that it was probably underwater.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any dry land,
Mm-hmm.
but there was land,
Yeah.
you could
Okay.
say, right?
Yeah.
So eretz is, of course, already existing. We saw that up
So
in
the
verse
word
2.
is dry.
The word
That's
here
important.
is dry. So this gathering of the waters
Mm-hmm.
created, if you will, I shouldn't use the word create, but made,
Fashioned.
brought about
Yeah.
this dry land.
Okay.
All right. And again, the important point here is now he's going to fill this up
Mm-hmm.
with, of course, he's going to fill up the seas with these great sea monsters
Mm-hmm.
and things and the fish and so on and so forth. And he's going to fill up the dry land with these creeping things and the cattle and, of course, man and woman eventually.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's the first act of work that God did on the third day. Now, notice we're moving on to the second act. This would be verse 11.
Well, we skipped the part where it says God saw that it was good.
Right. God saw that it was good there in verse 10. So there's our, there is our, what would this be? Our really our second. And God saw
Yeah.
and it was good. So now I guess you can see the dry land.
Mm-hmm.
So God says, hey, he saw it.
That's a good thing.
And it was good.
Okay. So verse 11, then God said, let the earth produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and fruit trees on the earth, bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And it was so.
All right. So a lot going on here. We should maybe first again say, okay, this is the second act of work that God is doing. And we see this, and God said. And then this is pretty interesting. We have another volitional verb. Yours said, let the earth bring forth vegetation.
Let the earth produce vegetation.
Produce. So first of all, notice the word let,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have another volitional verb. Everything is going according to our structure here. And what I think is interesting here is let the earth bring forth vegetation. And here the word bring forth is the same word as the word vegetation. I suppose a literal rendering would be let the land, the eretz, the earth, you could say, grass. In other words, let it bring forth green grass. But the bring forth is the same word as the word grass.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the author here is saying that this is what's going to happen. And what I also think is interesting is, okay, this is the earth doing this, right? The earth is producing this grass. In a sense, God is not necessarily doing it yet. He's just saying, let the earth do this. And then, of course, we're going to see that the earth in verse 12 does exactly this. You want to go ahead and read verse 12?
The earth produced vegetation, seed-bearing plants according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good.
All right. So again, we see here that exactly as God willed, he said, let the earth do this. Sure enough, the earth brought these things forth.
Yeah.
The only other thing I think we need to point out, we see the green grass or the vegetation seeding seeds after its kind. That is a tree making fruit with the seed in it after its kind. So we might notice here that all of these things are taking place after their kind. So again, in the pattern of the particular thing that is being made or produced, that's how it's being made, after its own kind. And the
Mm.
reason why I point that out is this is what's going to happen with the animals and the fish and the fowl and everything, but it's not going to be the case on day 6.
Mm.
That's going to be much different.
So
And it's something
I
we
think you're
really
hinting at a theological
need.
point
Yeah,
there.
we really need to pay attention
Mm.
to that. All right, you want to close out this day then?
Yeah. So verse 13, God saw that it was good. Evening came, and then morning, the third day.
All right, so there we are. The third day, we have our ordinal number. The third day is over. And we could say the first half of God's preparation of the heavens and the earth, his preparation for human habitation, is complete. And he's done a lot of dividing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, again, organizing things into these spheres. And now days 4 through 6 are going to be all about filling it up. So let's rush on to day 4, because we have a little bit of work here to do in day 4, and we might run out of time before we get to day 5 even.
Okay, verse 14. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night. They will serve as signs for seasons and for days and years."
All right. So again, a lot of work to do here in this verse. So we should just note immediately, we have another "and God said," and we have another "let there be." Now, this is, of course, the day where we get into this discussion of, okay, did he create the sun, the moon, and the stars on day 4? And we said last time, as we covered the first day, where he said, "Let there be light," in my estimation, he's not creating the sun, the moon, and the stars on this particular day. And the main reason, there's actually 3 pretty strong reasons. The first reason is I think everything was already created in day 1. That is, all the things that are not created here in this week, like man and woman, already existed in Genesis 1:1, not day 1, but Genesis 1:1.
Right.
So that would be one reason. The second reason is there's evening and morning. And again, it's pretty hard to get evening and morning if there's no sun and moon. And the third reason is we've already seen the earth, grass.
Mm-hmm.
And again, hard to have that happen without the sun, the moon, and the stars.
Yeah.
So we would say, okay, the sun, the moon, and the stars already existed. Well, what is going on here? And I think there's a grammatical explanation here. There's a famous Hebrew lexicon, grammar, if you will. It's a reference grammar. It's very old. It's called GKC, Gesenius Couch Cali. And these people worked through the Hebrew Bible, front and to the end, backwards, forwards. Really did a lot of this. And this reference grammar is fairly old. It's still being produced, still, again, used often. This is a huge addition. There are new ones, but this one's still very much being used. And they talk about when the to be verb, we have that here, let there be, and a particular preposition and infinitive are used, it means that it doesn't mean let there be like we saw in the day 1, let there be light. No, this is let there be to divide, or to give light, I should say. 14, let there be to divide. And we see that infinitive, to divide. Let me hear you read the CSB again here on verse 14.
Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night.
To separate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, like the Hebrew, it separates the let there be from the infinitive. But what GKC, what this reference grammar is saying about this particular verse, amidst a bunch of other examples, is really it should be, let there be to divide these lights in the firmament of the heavens, right, or in the expanse of the heavens. So it's not saying let there be lights, as in I'm going to create lights.
Yeah.
No, it's saying let these lights divide. Let there be to divide these lights, right? So God is like literally bringing these lights into this sphere to divide between the day and the night. So there we're going all the way back to, of course, day one, when he also divided between the light and the darkness to give us day and night. So that would be my explanation of what's going on here. And I guess you could say it's not even mine, it's GKC's, that
Sure.
this is what's going on here. He's not
Yeah.
creating the sun, moon, and stars.
Yeah.
They were already there,
Mm-hmm.
but he is bringing them to this particular place to divide
Yeah.
and to separate between the day and the night. And then also for lights and for festivals and for special days and for special years. So again, here we see the interest of the author in the calendar, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
for festivals and for special days like Sabbath days and
Yeah.
Jubilee years and these special feasts, if you will, especially in the Jewish calendar.
Hmm.
Now, verse 15 goes on with a similar explanation, and they will be for lights in the expanse of the heaven to give light upon the earth. So we have a similar thing going on here. They are going to give light upon the land, and sure enough, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I just might add here that everyone who deals with Genesis 1 has to wrestle with this difficult issue. Calvin, I think, mentioned that the earth wasn't completed until the fourth day. You know, that's how he's explaining the sun, the moon, and the stars on the fourth day when you had light on the first day. There are many other explanations of different things going on here,
Mm-hmm.
but this would be my attempt to get at what is going on here. Now, notice in verse 16, we have this word made again. And God made the two great lights, the great light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night and the stars. So here we have our same word made.
Yeah.
It's not the word create. It's this word asa. This is the same word we explained back in verse 7, where made can mean bring into order. Like I made my bed, right? I
Right.
straightened it up.
Mm-hmm.
So God here is doing some kind of fashioning, bringing into order his creation, again, for the purpose of giving light and for the purpose of governing, if you will, the day and the night. And then that brings us to verse 17. We're pretty close here to the end of the fourth day. So then he gives them in the expanse of the heavens. So we might see here again another explanation of the action here, that these great lights, as we explained them, the sun and the moon and the stars, were here in his creation. And now he's, again, placing them perhaps in a particular way in the sky, again, in this expanse, in this nothing, this thing that we cannot see or that God didn't see up there. And again, he's doing it to give light upon the land and to govern over the day and over the night. And then again, we get the purpose statement here, to divide between the light and the darkness. This is all in verse 17. Again, so now we're going all the way back to Genesis 1:2, where there was darkness over the waters. And here then he is dividing. And what happens at the end of this verse? God saw
that it was good.
That it was good.
Yeah.
Right. So here then we have another, and God saw that it was good. So we had one in day one, we have none in day two, we have two in day three, and we have one in day four. So here we have day four is complete. There was evening and morning, the fourth day. And I added, or I mentioned that there are an increasing amount of words in each day. Well, that was only partially true.
Okay.
Day one, there's a few amount of words. Day two, there's more amount of words. Day three, with its two acts of working, there's more words. Day 4 and day 3 have actually the exact same number of words in Hebrew, but there are more lines, there are more verses and lines on the fourth day. So there's a little bit more on the fourth day
Mm-hmm.
than there is on the third day. Now, when we come into our next episode, we're going to see in day 5 that there's actually a decrease in words. So we're
Okay.
going to have to explain that again before day 6
Mm-hmm.
explodes onto the scene.
Yeah.
All right? So join us next time as we discuss how the Bible is for you and about you as we cover days 5 and 6 in our next episode.